This man is the criminal who took justice into his own hands by ending the life of Jeffrey Dahmer, one of America's most notorious serial killers. Why did Christopher Scarver target the Milwaukee cannibal? Was it revenge, justice, or something deeper? Today, you'll uncover the shocking details of this brutal prison attack that took down one of history's most infamous murderers. Was Scarver a vigilante or merely another disturbed inmate? What truly happened behind those prison walls? Stick around as we dive into a story of murder, madness, and a desperate search for justice. Christopher Scarver was born on July 6, 1969 in Milwaukee, the largest city in Wisconsin, USA. The second of 5 siblings, he attended James Madison High School, a public institution, before leaving school in the 11th grade. After dropping out, he sought employment and was hired as a carpenter under a training program with the Wisconsin Conservation Corps. Edward Patz, his supervisor, promised him a full-time position upon completing the program, but the promise was never fulfilled, and Scarver was ultimately dismissed. Feeling betrayed, Scarver's behavior spiraled. He began drinking heavily and claimed he was hearing voices that called him the One. Consuming large quantities of alcohol and smoking marijuana daily, his life became increasingly unstable, leading his mother to evict him. At the same time, his girlfriend became pregnant, adding to his stress and frustrations. In his mind, the failure of the program that had employed him became the focus of his desire for revenge. On June 1, 1990, at just 21 years old, Scarver returned to the Wisconsin Conservation Corps training office, armed with a .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Inside, he confronted Steve Lohman, the new 27-year-old supervisor who had replaced Edward Patz. Demanding money, Scarver received only $15 from Lohman before fatally shooting him. Turning to John Fallon, the office manager, he warned, "Do you think I'm joking? I need more money." Scarver continued to demand more money from Lohman, shouting furiously. In a fit of rage, he fired 2 more shots at Lohman before Fallon finally handed him a check for $3,000. Scarver then shot Fallon, wounding him, and made his escape. Hours later, the police apprehended Scarver sitting in the driveway of his girlfriend's apartment building with the .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun and the stolen check still in his possession. Upon arrest, Scarver acknowledged the gravity of his actions, admitting that he intended to turn himself in. Despite having no prior criminal record, he attempted to use a mental illness defense, but psychiatric evaluations concluded that he was fit to stand trial. In April 1992, Scarver was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. During the sentencing, the Milwaukee County judge noted the irony that a job training program meant to alleviate the despair leading to crime had become the target of Scarver's violent outburst. The judge set April 13, 2037 as the earliest possible parole date, given the execution-style murder of 27-year-old Stephen J. Lohman. Scarver was transferred to Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. 2 years into his incarceration, Christopher Scarver made headlines across Wisconsin and much of the United States. On the morning of November 28, 1994, Scarver was assigned to a work detail alongside 2 other inmates, Jesse Anderson and Jeffrey Dahmer. The 3 men were tasked with cleaning the gym bathroom at the prison. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, often referred to as the Milwaukee Butcher, was a serial killer born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on May 21, 1960. Dahmer was responsible for the gruesome murders of 17 men between 1978 and 1991. He confessed to all of his crimes, admitting to eating parts of his victims. Additionally, he described masturbating over the bodies and skulls of those he found beautiful in an attempt to maintain control over them. Dahmer revealed that he felt a sense of power and euphoria by staying close to his victims after their deaths and keeping their skulls as trophies. His typical approach involved luring young men to his apartment under the pretense of watching pornography or taking photographs. Once there, he would drug them, strangle them, sexually assault them, and masturbate over their corpses. Dahmer would then photograph the dismemberment process and attempt to turn his victims into zombies using acid, hoping to make them submissively follow his commands. Dahmer's crime spree ended on July 22, 1991, when his final victim, Tracy Edwards, managed to escape while handcuffed and alerted police. Upon searching Dahmer's apartment, officers found graphic photographs of mutilated bodies, human remains, and a head in the freezer still covered in flesh. The walls were stained with blood, and the apartment contained 7 skulls and numerous bones. In 1992, Dahmer was declared mentally competent by a jury, resulting in a sentence of 15 consecutive life terms. Initially kept in isolation for his safety at Columbia Correctional Institution, he later requested to interact more with the general inmate population, allowing him to eat and work alongside other prisoners. The third inmate present with Scarver on November 28, 1994, was Jesse Anderson, a married father of 3 whose seemingly normal life took a dark turn on April 21, 1992. Without any apparent motive, Anderson stabbed his wife Barbara 5 times in the face and head before attempting to take his own life by stabbing himself in the chest 4 times, though his injuries were mostly superficial. Barbara Anderson fell into a coma and succumbed to her injuries 2 days later. Jesse Anderson claimed that 2 African-American men were responsible for the attack, even presenting a basketball cap he claimed to have snatched from one of the attackers.
Do you want to play poker fully anonymous from anywhere in the world? Whether you're in the USA, Canada, China, or beyond, join Free Roll Hunter on Club GG Poker. Enjoy fast deposits and withdrawals in crypto. Dive into a variety of games including NL Hold'em, PLO5, Omaha, and more. Take advantage of our great Rakeback program to boost your earnings. Don't miss our daily tournaments for a chance to win big. Click the link in the pinned comments and description to start playing today.
However, a college student later informed police that Anderson had purchased the cap from him just days before the incident. Additionally, evidence showed that the red-handled fishing knife used in the murder was bought by Anderson a couple of weeks earlier. As a result, he was charged with his wife's murder, and on August 13, 1992, was convicted and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 60 years. Upon his arrival at Columbia Correctional Institution in Wisconsin around the same time as Dahmer in 1992, Scarver quickly realized that keeping his distance from the Milwaukee Monster was necessary. Due to constant tension with other inmates, Dahmer was typically accompanied by at least 1 guard when outside his cell. Heated confrontations between Dahmer and fellow prisoners were a regular occurrence. Scarver, known for being a solitary figure, observed Dahmer from afar but chose not to interact, wary of becoming a target of Dahmer's unsettling humor. "I never had contact with him," Scarver later told reporters. On the morning of November 28, 1994, Scarver, then 25, was performing cleaning duties alongside Dahmer and Anderson when corrections officers left them unsupervised and unrestrained. A sudden altercation broke out. Scarver grabbed a 20-inch metal bar from exercise equipment in the weight room and struck Dahmer and Anderson with it. The exact details of what transpired that morning remain unclear. In 2015, journalist James Romo from the New York Post published an article following an interview with Scarver, who believed that Dahmer was not remorseful for his crimes. Scarver detested Dahmer, who was known for playing gruesome pranks, like shaping prison food to resemble severed limbs, drizzling it with tomato sauce to imitate blood, and placing it for other inmates to find. Jeffrey crossed the line with many people, inmates, prison staff. "Some people in prison show remorse, but he wasn't one of them," Scarver said. Pastor Roy Ratcliffe, who worked at the prison, noted that Dahmer often joked about his past, which unsettled the guards. If he saw a guard was nervous, Dahmer would say, "I bite," startling the guard before laughing, Ratcliffe explained. In a way, he was amplifying his own terrifying image, generating more fear among those around him. That was his twisted sense of humor in dealing with his desperate circumstances, the pastor added. Scarver, meanwhile, admitted that although he had never spoken to Dahmer before the incident, he was aware of Dahmer's unpopularity among inmates and had seen him involved in several conflicts. Scarver's disgust with Dahmer's crimes, coupled with the killer's behavior, seemed to have ignited the fatal encounter. According to Scarver's account, he was carrying a newspaper clipping detailing Dahmer's crimes in his pocket that day. "I had just finished mopping and was filling a bucket with water when I felt a shove from behind," Scarver recalled. "I turned and saw Dahmer and the other inmate laughing. I looked them both in the eye, but I couldn't tell who had pushed me." After they separated, Scarver followed Dahmer into the locker room, feeling revulsion over Dahmer's crimes. Scarver grabbed a 20-inch, 5-pound metal barbell from the weight room and confronted Dahmer with the newspaper article in hand. He angrily asked whether the reports were true. Dahmer, visibly shaken, attempted to flee, but Scarver blocked his path. "When Dahmer tried to escape, I swung the metal bar at his head. 2 blows were enough to crack his skull," Scarver later told reporters. "The Milwaukee monster was dead, and I bowed my head." Afterwards, Scarver walked across the gym to the locker room where Anderson, then 37, was working. Scarver paused briefly, looking around to check if any officers were nearby. Seeing none, he struck Anderson on the head with the metal bar. When Scarver returned to his cell earlier than expected, an officer asked why he wasn't working. Meanwhile, 2 other officers discovered the gravely injured inmates. Dahmer succumbed to his injuries on the way to the hospital, while Anderson remained on life support for 2 days before passing away at the University of Wisconsin Hospital in Madison. Scarver later suggested that his being left alone with Dahmer that morning was no accident, as prison officials were aware of his hatred for Dahmer and likely wanted him dead. The guards had something to do with it, Scarver claimed, mentioning that security personnel had mysteriously disappeared just before he attacked Dahmer. He refrained from providing more details, citing concerns for his safety. "I would need a good lawyer to ensure there's no retaliation from Wisconsin officials or to protect me from potential retaliation," Scarver told the New York Post. However, an investigation following the incident concluded that Scarver acted alone. In 2015, months after the New York Post interview, Scarver posted a note on his blog denying the published version of events, accusing the journalist of misrepresenting his words and misleading readers. It appears that Scarver's killings of both Dahmer and Anderson were driven by psychotic episodes linked to his schizophrenia. After the murders, Scarver initially pleaded insanity, but later changed his plea to incompetence in exchange for a transfer to a federal penitentiary. He received 2 additional life sentences for the killings in prison on top of the one he was already serving. He spent 16 years in solitary confinement and filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in 2005, claiming he had endured cruel and unusual punishment, violating his constitutional rights. A district court judge dismissed parts of the lawsuit and found no illegal actions by the remaining officials. Scarver's appeal in 2006 was unsuccessful, but the federal district court judge eventually mandated the relocation of Scarver and other inmates with severe mental illness. Scarver was transferred to several facilities before reaching his current location at Centennial Correctional Facility in Canyon City, Colorado. He has been evaluated by multiple doctors but still struggles to fully comprehend his mental health issues. In his personal research, Scarver partly attributes his psychotic episodes to the prison food, specifically blaming bread and refined sugar. "I found that certain foods cause these episodes," he claimed. In prison, Scarver has embraced writing and poetry. He started with a blog and later self-published books available on Amazon. His work includes songs, compositions, short stories, poems, and art, along with advocacy for prison policy reform. He has expressed a desire to study mechanical and industrial engineering, even proposing a program that would allow inmates to attend university. One of his books, The Boy They Left Behind, is described on Amazon as a poetic vision of the world as seen from behind prison walls. His poetry reflects a personal transformation from despair to hope and from distrust to recognizing good in others. Scarver's ultimate goal is to further his education and offer second chances to other inmates within the U.S. prison system. In 2012, Christopher Scarver's agent announced that he was ready to write a book detailing the murder of Jeffrey Dahmer, 17 years after the infamous cannibal's death. Now 42, Scarver hoped to sell the idea to publishers, aiming to share new insights about Dahmer's last moments, as well as the sadistic mind games and pranks he used to torment staff and fellow inmates. Scarver also intended to convey the life lessons he had learned since then. However, the book never reached publication. Throughout his time behind bars, Christopher has maintained contact with his son, also named Chris Scarver. The younger Scarver has shared that he strives to lead a righteous and honest life, finding strength and guidance from his father. Christopher Scarver's story illustrates the challenges of managing mental illness without proper diagnosis or treatment. Despite his young age of 21 when first imprisoned, the lack of mental health support allowed his condition to worsen, ultimately resulting in more violence. Today, after years in medium security conditions, he appears to have found a sense of peace through writing. Yet the fact remains that he killed one of history's most notorious serial killers without remorse. And that concludes today's crime story. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave your comments below, always showing respect for the victim and their family.